The edge of human space was quiet, almost too quiet. The blackness of the void stretched endless, with only the cold shine of distant stars and the faint glimmer of far-off nebulae. Yet hidden deep within that silence, a single human scout ship floated like a shadow. Its hull was dark, built to swallow light. Its engines ran in near silence, leaving no trace for enemy sensors to follow. Inside the scout ship, Captain Elias sat strapped to his command chair. His eyes never left the hollow display showing the border of Terran space. He knew what was coming. He knew the warnings had been ignored. The alien armadas were moving. Thousands of ships bold enough to enter what humanity had sworn was forbidden. They thought the warning was nothing more than empty pride from a young race. They thought humans were weak, simple, and untested. Elias almost felt sorry for them. Almost far beyond, the alien fleet stretched like a living storm. Warships of every size, from small frigates to massive carriers, sailed proudly toward the border. Their commanders laughed as they crossed the Yao, invisible line into Terran space. They called humans arrogant for trying to claim such territory. They believed their numbers would crush whatever defenses Earth might have. Their confidence was loud, their pride blinding. But none of them saw the silent scout ship hidden in the void, watching, recording, waiting. Elias gave a single order. To his crew, his voice was steady, calm, yet heavy with finality. Send the signal. A coded pulse shot out into the dark, bouncing between satellites hidden across the border. It traveled faster than the alien fleets could dream, racing back to Earth. The call was simple, one word only, but it carried the weight of war: trespass. On the alien flagships, commanders sat in their thrones, staring at their displays with amusement. Their fleets stretched wider and wider, filling the black. They boasted of victory before the first shot had even been fired. Some laughed that Earth might beg for mercy. Others spoke of enslaving humans, turning them into labor for their growing empire. None of them noticed that the stars around them were shifting. None of them understood that the silence itself was alive. Back on the scout ship, Elias leaned forward. His crew whispered nervously, "Do you think command will send them?" One asked. Elias's lips curved into the smallest of grim smiles. "They are already coming," he said. His words carried no doubt. For centuries, humanity had been quiet, building in shadows, showing only what the galaxy expected: a species too young, too gentle, too eager for peace. But that mask was only a mask. Humanity had waited for this moment, waited for the arrogance of others to test their warning. The alien fleets pushed deeper into Terran space, confident and blind. They sent probes ahead, but those probes returned nothing. They launched scanning waves, but the waves came back empty. It was as if the space itself had swallowed every sign of life. Yet the silence grew heavier, the stars colder. Some alien captains began to feel unease, but their leaders dismissed. They had come too far. They would not turn back. One alien admiral, older than the rest, watched his screens in silence. His instincts whispered that something was wrong. The humans had not answered. The humans had not threatened. No fleets had risen to meet them. The lack of resistance was not weakness, it was patience. He tried to warn his fellow commanders, but they only mocked him. "Earth cannot stand against us," they said. "We are too many," they declared. Pride had already blinded them. Elias and his small crew could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. They were the first to witness what was coming. The galaxy had forgotten Earth's warning, but soon they would remember. The scout ship drifted silently through the dark, recording every movement of the alien armadas, transmitting everything. Back to Terran High Command, humanity's guardians were waking. The border of Earth's space was no longer empty, though the aliens did not yet see it. Hidden fortresses stirred from their long silence. Sleeping dreadnoughts turned their cannons toward the void, black hulls reflecting no light. Entire fleets that the galaxy had never seen began to move, cloaked and waiting for a single order. Earth had no need to shout or threaten. The message had already been written in silence. Elias whispered as he stared at the display. His words meant only for himself and his crew. They should have listened. In that moment, the void itself seemed to hold its breath. The alien armadas sailed proudly forward, but their pride was nothing more than fuel for the storm about to fall on them. For the first time in centuries, Terran space would know war again. And this time, it would not be Earth that bled. It would be those who ignored the warning. Those who believed the mask of gentleness. Those who thought humanity weak. The stars around the border shimmered faintly as the first Terran warships stirred, unseen and waiting. The game had already begun, and the aliens had already lost. The alien fleet surged deeper into Terran space, their engines burning bright across the darkness. Thousands of ships formed a wall of metal and pride, banners of their empires glowing against the void. Their commanders sat tall in their command chairs, confident that nothing stood in their way. They had ignored the warnings written across centuries. They had laughed at human pride, and now, with each passing hour, they pressed further into the region they called forbidden. On the scout ship hidden behind an asteroid field, Captain Elias and his crew watched quietly. The coded signal had already been sent, Terran High Command knew. Somewhere far beyond their sight, humanity was moving. Ships were waking, orders were spreading. Elias felt a weight in his chest as he looked at the massive fleets before him. He whispered under his breath, "They don't even see it coming." His crew glanced at him, half afraid, half eager. They too felt the storm building in silence. The aliens were not cautious. They broadcast open channels filled with arrogant words. Some commanders mocked the humans. Others promised to tear down their colonies. They spoke of claiming Earth itself, turning its oceans into fuel, its people into slaves. The words carried across the void, and though the humans did not answer, every insult was recorded, every threat catalogued. They had given humanity more than reason. They had given them proof. As the alien fleets advanced, strange signals began to appear. At first it was faint, flickers on the edge of their scanners, ghost images of ships that appeared for a second and vanished. Some dismissed it as glitches, others as tricks of the void. But a few captains felt unease. They sent scouts to investigate. Small frigates broke off, searching the dark. Yet none of them returned. Their signals blinked out, their voices vanished, and silence swallowed them whole. Whispers began to pass through the alien armadas. Some feared that human warships were already hunting them, but the admirals crushed the fear with sharp words. "Humans are too weak to face us," they declared. "These are tricks, nothing more." But deep in their minds, even the proudest leaders could not deny the creeping sense of danger. Something was watching them. Something that had prepared for this moment. Far behind enemy lines in the hidden stations of Terra, giant warships stirred from their slumber. Black steel hulls the size of cities moved out of their docks. Engines burned with silent fury. Dreadnoughts, carriers, and cruisers slipped into the void like predators. Their weapons systems armed, their shields rising. They did not rush, they did not scream. They moved with patience as if time itself was their ally. Elias watched the alien fleet stretch wider and wider. He could feel the tension tightening like a coiled wire. His crew looked at him for comfort, but he gave only truth. "This is the first trespass," he said quietly. "The first step. Into a grave they dug themselves." His words were not cruel, they were simple fact. On the alien flagship, Admiral Koresh stood tall. His eyes burned with pride as he gazed at the endless black. He had commanded fleets that crushed empires. He had broken rebels, destroyed colonies. To him, Earth was nothing. Another world to burn, another people to enslave. He dismissed the reports of missing ships. He silenced the younger captains who spoke of shadows. To Koresh, this was victory, already won. But as he stared into the void, a strange chill brushed his thoughts. Something about the silence felt wrong. The alien fleets continued, but with each light year into Terran space, the strange disturbances grew stronger. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision. Beacons blinked and died without warning. Navigation systems showed routes that suddenly twisted into dead ends. It was as if the space itself was bending against them. Engineers swore their machines were fine. Captains cursed at failing systems. Still, they marched forward, their pride demanding it, on the scout ship. Elias received a quiet signal. It was short, coded, and final. He read it once and felt the air shift in the cabin. His crew leaned closer, waiting. He spoke softly, his voice steady. "High Command has authorized interception." The words carried through the small ship like a storm. They knew what it meant. The humans were no longer silent watchers. They were about to act. Far across the border, in the Black Sea of the Void, the first Terran fleet moved into position. They were cloaked, hidden by technology no alien empire had ever seen. Dozens of ships glided together, their weapons silent, but ready. The fleet commander, an old woman named Admiral Vera, stood at the front of her warship. Her eyes were cold, her voice calm as she spoke to her officers. "They have chosen to trespass," she said. "Now they will learn why Earth's space is forbidden." Still the aliens laughed, unaware of what stirred around them. They played recordings of old human broadcasts, mocking their gentle words of peace. They filled their channels with arrogance, boasting of victory that had not yet been earned. They did not know that every boast was the rhythm of a funeral drum. The moment was close. Elias could feel it. His heart beat heavy in his chest as he stared at the endless armadas before him. They had walked willingly into the jaws of the lion. The first trespass had been made, and in that moment, their fate was sealed. The signal spread across Terran space like fire racing through dry grass, in hidden fortresses and deep space stations. The silence ended. Engines lit up one by one, black steel tightened stirring from long sleep. Humanity's fleets had waited for this moment, not for years, but for centuries. Their patience was over. The trespass had been made. Now came the human response. Admiral Vera stood tall on the bridge of the dreadnought Invictus. The ship was a monster, its hull blacker than the void. Its cannons lined the sides like the teeth of a predator. Around it floated an entire battle group. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers. Each ship cloaked invisible to the arrogant eyes of the aliens who sailed deeper into Terran space. Vera raised her hand and spoke in a calm, measured voice. "Form." The line. All across the hidden fleet, officers repeated the command. "Form the line." Terran ships moved into position with deadly precision. Each captain knew their place, each warship sliding into a vast wall of firepower. For now they did not reveal themselves. They waited. They let the aliens advance further, deeper, into the trap. On the scout ship near the asteroid belt, Captain Elias and his crew watched in awe. Through their displays, they could see the ghostly outlines of Terran ships slipping into formation. He whispered softly, almost reverently, "They've come." His crew felt the air tighten. The fear they carried was replaced with something sharper: pride. Humanity was no longer hiding. Humanity was answering. Meanwhile, the alien fleet spread wider. Admiral Koresh sat on his throne aboard his flagship Eternal Spear. He gazed at the endless black and scoffed at the silence. "Weaklings," he muttered, "too afraid to meet us." He had lost frigates and scouts, but he dismissed them as accidents. He believed humans had nothing to show. He had crushed empires. Before, Earth would be no different. Yet deep in his chest, unease stirred like a quiet warning. One of his younger captains broke protocol and spoke. "Admiral, sensors show fluctuations in the void." Koresh's eyes narrowed. "Explain." The captain hesitated. "It looks like movement, but then it's gone. As if something is there, then not there." Koresh silenced him with a wave. "Your scanners are weak. Humans do not have the power to threaten us. Press forward." His words carried across the fleet. His arrogance drowned out caution. Back on the Invictus, Admiral Vera received the final command from High Command. Her lips tightened as she read the single word, "Engage." She lowered her hand. "Uncloak." The black wall of Terran warships shimmered into existence. Dozens, then hundreds of massive ships emerged from the dark. Their engines burned cold blue. Their cannons glowed faintly with rising power. The silence of the void broke under. The hum of weapons charging. For the first time, the aliens saw them, and their pride cracked. On Koresh's flagship, alarm screamed. His officers shouted in disbelief. "They're everywhere! How did we not detect them?" "Their size, Admiral. Those ships are massive." Koresh stared at the displays, his confidence shaken for the first time. The humans had not sent a token defense. They had sent an armada equal to, if not greater than, his own. And they had been waiting in silence, watching every step. The first shots rang out. Bright lances of energy cut through the void. Terran destroyers struck with surgical precision. Alien frigates exploded, their hulls torn apart before they even knew they were under attack. Human torpedoes streaked across space, their trails vanishing as they struck carriers, turning them into fields of fire. The alien fleets scrambled to respond, chaos flooding. Their comms, Admiral Vera stood unmoved as her ships fired in perfect harmony. "Hold formation," she commanded. "Crush them step by step." Her eyes did not flicker with rage or cruelty. She was cold, controlled, efficient. Every move she made was calculated, every shot meant to remind the galaxy why Earth's space was forbidden. On the scout ship, Elias and his crew watched the war unfold. Their voices shook as they whispered, among themselves, "Look at them, they're not even breaking formation, the aliens." They never expected this. Elias only nodded, his eyes locked on the carnage. "This is the response," he said quietly. "This is humanity without its mask." Alien fleets struggled to regroup. Koresh barked orders, forcing his captains to rally. "Bring the heavy battleships forward. Concentrate fire on their largest dreadnoughts. Break their line before it closes around us." Massive alien cannons lit up the dark. Their firepower was terrifying. Whole Terran shields flared bright. Under the assault, some human ships cracked under the barrage, breaking apart in silence. But their deaths were not wasted. For every ship lost, 10 alien vessels fell. The void was no longer silent. It roared with fire and fury. Yet even in the chaos, one truth became clear. The humans were not fighting with desperation. They were fighting with control. Their fleets moved like a single organism, each ambush prepared, each strike exact. They had waited for this, trained for this, and now they executed with merciless perfection. Admiral Koresh gripped his chair with iron claws, his pride burned into fury. "This cannot be," he shouted. But as he stared at the endless black filled with Terran warships, he realized the truth he had denied. Earth had not been weak. Earth had been patient. And now, with their armadas revealed, their response was no mere defense. It was a promise of ruin. And so the first great clash of the war began. The aliens had made their trespass. The humans had answered. And the galaxy, watching from afar, would never forget what was unfolding in the Forbidden Zone. The void burned with fire as the first exchange of weapons lit up Terran space. The alien, fleets once proud and untouchable, found themselves thrown into confusion. Their perfect lines collapsed under the first wave of human strikes. Ships they thought invincible exploded like fragile glass. Frigates tore apart in silence. Carriers cracked in half. Their arrogance had blinded them, and now the price was being written in wreckage. On the bridge of the dreadnought Invictus, Admiral Vera stood like a statue. Her voice was calm even as the void outside shook with fire. "Titan formation. Do not chase. Let them come to us." Her fleet obeyed with perfect precision. Terran warships held their line, their cannons moving in unison. Every shot cut deep, every strike deliberate. Humanity had no need for chaos. They fought like surgeons wielding knives of light. Across the enemy fleets, panic spread. Admiral Koresh roared from his throne. His voice cut through the noise of his officers. "Hold your ground. Push forward. Overwhelm them with firepower." His heavy battleship surged ahead. Massive cannons lighting up the void. Their fire rained down on the Terran line. Shields flared bright. Metal cracked. A human destroyer vanished in a ball of flame. Then another. For a moment, Koresh felt triumph return. But the humans were not breaking. They absorbed the blows, shifted their shields, sacrificed smaller ships to protect the larger ones. Then, as if the void itself moved with them, Terran dreadnoughts fired as one. The answering volley was monstrous. A wall of energy slammed into Koresh's forward line. 3 battleships shattered. One split into 2 pieces, its glowing core spilling across the dark. The cheering on Koresh's bridge died. His officers fell silent. On the hidden scout ship, Captain Elias and his crew watched the battlefield with wide eyes. their screens filled with chaos, streaks of light carving the black. He whispered, "This is the clash of Armadas." His crew nodded, unable to look away. For the first time, they understood why Earth had stayed silent for so long. They had not been weak. They had been waiting to unleash something terrifying. The aliens regrouped. They brought their carriers forward, unleashing swarms of fighters, thousands of small. Ships surged into the void, filling space like angry hornets. Their weapons rained fire against the Terran line. Human cruisers moved to meet them, launching their own fighters, but the numbers were staggering. The void became a storm of speed and fire. Drones, interceptors, and bombers clashed in swarms so thick it looked like stars colliding. "Bring in the reserve wings," Admiral Vera commanded. Her voice remained calm, never raised. From the hidden carriers behind the line, more Terran squadrons surged into battle. But these were different. Sleek, silent ships armed with weapons the galaxy had never seen. They sliced through alien fighters with surgical precision. One pilot's voice came through the comms, steady and sharp, targets locked, cutting them down. Within minutes, the alien swarms began to break apart. On the alien flagship, Koresh slammed his claws against the arm of his chair. "Focus fire on their carriers," he roared. His battleships turned their cannons, hurling fire into the human rear. One Terran carrier exploded, its wreckage spinning across the field. For a brief moment, the aliens felt a spark of victory. But then the trap closed. Terran destroyers shifted, their weapons cutting into Koresh's exposed flank. Alien cruisers tore apart in silence. Koresh realized too late that every move he made was predicted. Every step answered. The humans were fighting like predators who had studied their prey for generations. Elias leaned closer to his display. His voice was a whisper but heavy with awe. "They're bleeding them slowly, piece by piece." His crew shivered, some looked pale. The humans were not only fighting to survive, they were teaching a lesson written in destruction. The battle raged for hours. The void was filled with wreckage, broken ships, and drifting bodies. Fire lit the endless dark in bursts that shook entire fleets. Yet through it all, the Terran line held. Human warships fought side by side, their discipline unshaken. Admiral Vera's voice cut steady through the storm. "Do not break formation. One fleet, one purpose." Her officers obeyed without hesitation. The aliens, by contrast, began to fracture. Pride turned to fear turned to chaos. Captains argued, fleets scattered, some tried to retreat, others pushed forward blindly. Their formation broke, and once it broke, the humans struck harder. Terran warships surged like wolves into the scattered herd. They did not chase every target. They struck where it hurt most. Flagships, carriers, fuel ships, all targeted with surgical cruelty. Admiral Koresh felt his empire's pride crumble before his eyes. He had believed Earth weak, gentle, fragile. Now he watched his proud armada tear apart piece by piece. His hands shook as he gripped his throne. His officers whispered behind him. Some begged him to retreat. Others begged him to surrender. His pride screamed against both. Yet deep down he knew, this was no ordinary war. This was judgment. The clash reached its peak. The void itself seemed to burn with fury. Wreckage filled space. Glowing cores burst like dying suns. And yet the Terran fleet pressed forward, cold, silent, merciless. Humanity had answered. Humanity had shown its mask was gone. The galaxy would soon hear of this clash, and they would remember, for when the Armadas met in the Forbidden Zone, only one side had walked in blind, and only one side would walk out alive. The battlefield was littered with fire and wreckage. Alien ships drifted as glowing corpses in the void, shattered hulls and broken engines floating endlessly through Terran space. Yet even in ruin, the invaders still fought. Their pride refused to let them admit defeat. Their armadas had been mighty once, feared across the galaxy. Now they were bleeding, but they still believed they could crush humanity if they pressed harder. Admiral Koresh stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Spear. His jaw clenched. His voice thundered over the comms. "Push the heavy battleships forward. Concentrate all firepower on their dreadnoughts." His officers obeyed. Massive alien cannons roared to life. Their fire cut across the void like blazing suns. Terran shields flared under the barrage. The Invictus, Admiral Vera's flagship, trembled as its armor groaned under the impact. For the first time in the battle, human ships were pushed back. On the bridge of the Invictus, Vera stood unmoved. The alarm screamed, sparks burst from panels, but her voice remained calm. "Hold the line, redirect shields, sacrifice the outer destroyers if needed." Her officers hesitated for only a moment before obeying. A small cluster of human destroyers broke formation. Their captains, knowing their fate, they surged ahead to intercept the incoming barrage. Alien fire tore through them, ripping their hulls apart. Their sacrifice absorbed the storm, sparing the core of the Terran line. From the hidden scout ship, Captain Elias and his crew watched in silence, their eyes wide as human destroyers gave their lives without hesitation. "They're buying time," one crewman whispered. Elias nodded grimly. Time for the fleet to strike back. He could feel it. The shift was coming. Humanity had not been broken. Humanity had only been waiting for the right moment. The alien armadas pushed harder, their carriers released fresh. Waves of fighters, their battleships fired without pause. They believed numbers would save them. They believed raw firepower would crush the humans. But humanity did not fight with numbers. Humanity fought with precision. "Execute maneuver Delta 7, Admiral Vera ordered. Her fleet shifted instantly. The Terran ships bent their formation. Opening a corridor in the center, the aliens saw it as weakness. Koresh roared with triumph. "They're breaking! Drive straight through!" His fleet surged into the opening like predators rushing toward prey. But in truth, they had entered a kill zone. From the flanks, hidden Terran cruisers decloaked. Their cannons blazed. Torpedoes streaked across the dark. The corridor became a slaughterhouse. Alien ships were shredded as they charged blindly forward. Koresh's proud battleships found themselves surrounded, attacked from all sides. The trap had snapped shut. Elias gripped the edge of his display. His heart pounded. "They baited them," he whispered. His crew leaned closer, their faces pale. They knew exactly how the aliens would move. The human fleet had given the illusion of weakness, and the aliens, blinded by pride, had thrown themselves into the jaws of the wolf. On the alien flagship, chaos erupted. Officers screamed reports. "We're surrounded. Our flanks are collapsing. We've lost the 7th carrier." Koresh slammed his claws against the chair. His pride burned into rage. "All ships break through, do not stop." But his words were desperation, not strategy. His fleets were bleeding too fast. Human warships pressed the advantage. Terran dreadnoughts advanced step by step, their cannons tearing through alien lines. Carriers launched fresh wings of fighters, sleek Terran interceptors that darted between larger ships. Disabling engines targeting bridges, alien pride turned into fear. Fear turned into panic. Yet Koresh refused to yield. He ordered his engineers to bring out their last weapon, a super cannon hidden within the eternal spear. Its power core hummed with energy, designed to shatter even planetary defenses. "Target the Invictus," Koresh commanded. "Erase their leader from the field." His officers obeyed. The super cannon charged, glowing like a star about to be born, on the Invictus. Alarms shrieked as sensors detected the rising energy. "Admiral, they've armed a superweapon," her officers shouted. Vera's expression remained calm. She spoke 3 words: "Deploy the veil." From the darkness above the battlefield, a massive Terran fortress uncloaked. Its size dwarfed even the dreadnoughts. An orbital station armed, with weapons the aliens had never seen. For centuries it had waited in silence, hidden like a shadow. Now it awakened. The alien supercannon fired. A beam of light brighter than a sun ripped across the void. For a heartbeat it looked unstoppable. Unstoppable until the fortress fired. A massive wave of counter-energy slammed into the beam, bending it, breaking it, scattering it across the void. The alien flagship shuddered, its own weapon tearing. At its hull, half the Eternal Spear's decks collapsed, smoke and fire spreading through the giant ship. Elias and his crew gasped. Their voices trembled. "That fortress, it was here all along." Elias nodded slowly. Humanity was never unprepared. They were only waiting for someone foolish enough to test them. His crew shivered. Understanding at last why the galaxy called Terran space forbidden, Koresh staggered. In his throne, his pride shattered, his fleets in ruin. The turning tide was no longer a tide, it was a flood. The humans pressed forward, merciless, precise, silent. Admiral Vera raised her hand once more. "Advance," she ordered. And the Terran fleets obeyed step by step, breaking the alien armadas that had once thought themselves invincible. The battle was not over yet, but the shift had come. The invaders no longer held the advantage. The hunters had become prey, and the galaxy, watching from the shadows, would never forget the day the tide turned against those who ignored Earth's warning. The void was choked with fire and drifting wreckage. Alien ships burned silently, their hulks tumbling into the darkness. But even as their fleets cracked under the weight of the Terran response, the invaders were not finished. Desperation breeds recklessness, and recklessness can be deadly. On the battered flagship Eternal Spear, Admiral Koresh stood bleeding from a wound on his temple. His pride had been carved into anger. His officers screamed reports of collapsing lines, but Koresh's eyes blazed with fury. "Activate the Leviathan Protocol," he growled. His officers froze, whispering among themselves. Activating the forbidden weapon meant only for the end of wars. From deep inside the flagship's core, massive conduits unlocked. Ancient technology stolen from a dozen conquered races was stitched into one monstrous device. The ship trembled as power surged through its veins. The Eternal Spear's spine split open, revealing a cannon larger than anything humanity had seen. It was no longer just a battleship. It had become a planet killer on the bridge of the Terran. Dreadnought Invictus. Admiral Vera's sharp eyes locked onto the energy spike. Her officers spoke quickly, fear leaking into their voices. "Admiral, their flagship is charging a weapon. Power output exceeds anything on record. It could crack a colony world." The alarms flared across the fleet. Vera's voice cut through the chaos, calm and steady. "Signal all ships, defensive protocols. Prepare for impact." Captain Elias, still aboard his scout ship, felt his chest tighten as the readings came through. The alien weapon was beyond imagination. It pulsed with enough energy to blind sensors, Elias muttered under his breath. "They'll burn everything, just to prove their pride." His crew shivered. They had seen many terrible weapons in their lives, but nothing like this. Admiral Koresh stood tall as the weapon reached its final charge. His voice roared across his fleet's comms. "Behold, the power of the Eternal Spear. Even in ruin we are gods, watch the humans fall." His crew cheered weakly, though their voices were laced with fear. The cannon glowed brighter and brighter, a star born in the heart of a dying armada, but humanity had not shown all its cards, either. From the far edge of the battlefield, the colossal Terran fortress moved forward. Its shadow spread across the void like a mountain drifting through the stars. Weapons as large as city blocks aligned into position. For centuries it had been hidden, buried in silence, built not as a weapon of conquest but as a guardian. Now it revealed itself for the first time. Admiral Vera's eyes never wavered as she gave the command, "Unseal the Aegis Lance." Across the fortress, massive panels split apart, revealing the barrel of a weapon older than most alien civilizations, forged in the secret forges of Earth. It was humanity's hidden sword, powered by reactors deep inside the Earth itself. The alien cannon fired. The void screamed with light as the beam erupted from the Eternal Spear. It cut through the darkness like the hand of a god, aimed straight at the heart of the Terran fleet. Smaller ships vaporized instantly. Shields melted. Even the Invictus shook under the wave of fire. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then the fortress fired. The Aegis Lance unleashed a torrent of energy unlike anything seen before. It struck the alien beam head-on. The void tore itself apart with the collision. Light and shadow twisted. Space bent. Stars dimmed in the distance as the clash of weapons shook reality itself. The alien cannon screamed as its power was torn apart. The Eternal Spear's hull cracked, its spine shattering under the stress. Elias shielded his eyes as the battlefield was drowned in white fire. His crew held their breath. The silence after. The impact felt heavier than death itself. Then slowly the displays cleared. They saw it. The alien weapon was broken. The eternal spear floated in ruin. Half its decks torn open, its massive cannon melted into slag. Admiral Koresh fell to his knees on the bridge of his dying flagship. Smoke and fire filled the chamber. His pride was gone, his voice a whisper. Impossible. How could humans build such a thing in silence? His officers had no answer. For centuries they had underestimated Earth, and now they saw the truth. Humanity had been preparing for this very moment. On the Invictus, Admiral Vera raised her hand, her voice never once shaking. Advance. Sweep the battlefield. No survivors who resist. The Terran fleet surged forward, dreadnoughts and destroyers cutting into what remained of the alien armadas. Their weapons fired in merciless unison. Every shot was a reminder. Humanity had not just survived, they had mastered the art of war in silence. Elias whispered as he watched the carnage. This was their hidden weapon all along. Not just the fortress, not just the lance, but patience. They waited. They prepared. They endured. His crew nodded. Their fear had turned to awe. Humanity was no longer a shadow in the galaxy. They were the storm. The alien fleets broke. Pride could no longer hold them together. Some tried to flee, others begged for mercy, but the humans gave no answer. Their silence was colder than any words. Wreckage piled upon wreckage as the Terran fleets pressed forward. The void became a graveyard. Koresh, his body broken, stared at the fading lights of his fleet. His voice was low, bitter. We thought them weak because they were quiet. But it is the quiet ones you must fear most. His words were swallowed by the flames of his dying ship. The hidden weapon of Earth had been revealed, not just in fire, but in the truth. That humanity's silence had always been a blade, waiting for the arrogant to walk upon it. And now, with the alien armadas broken, the galaxy would never again mistake Earth's gentleness for weakness. The battlefield was no longer a war front. It was a graveyard. The stars themselves seemed dimmer as they shone down on the drifting wreckage of the alien fleets. Thousands of ships once proud and powerful were now silent hulks, glowing with the last embers of fire. Alien bodies floated endlessly, their lifeless forms carried by the cold void. The proud banners of empires hung torn and burned. On the bridge of the Terran dreadnought Invictus, Admiral Vera watched the ruin without a flicker of triumph. Her eyes were hard, her voice steady. Continue the sweep. Leave no armed ship standing. The order spread like fire. Human fleets moved with ruthless precision. Dreadnoughts cut apart damaged alien cruisers. Destroyers hunted survivors who tried to regroup. Carriers unleashed waves of drones to scour the field. Humanity gave no pause, no chance for retreat. This was not mercy. This was a reminder. Captain, Elias on his small scout ship could barely find words. His crew stared wide-eyed at the aftermath. It's all gone, one whispered. Elias nodded slowly. This is the price of arrogance. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. The galaxy had mocked humanity's silence, and now that silence had shattered into fire. Across, the wreckage alien distress calls rang weakly, fragments of pride trying to cling to life. Some captains begged for reinforcements that would never come. Others cursed the humans, swearing vengeance even as their ships burned. And some, for the first time in their lives, begged for mercy. But the Terran fleets gave no answer. Their silence was colder than any blade. Admiral Koresh still lived, though barely. His flagship, Eternal Spear, was a broken husk, half its decks. Open to space, fires burned behind him as he leaned weakly against his throne. Blood streaked his face. His pride, once unshakable, was ash. He whispered to himself, "We were gods. We thought ourselves gods, and now we are nothing." His officers were gone. His fleets shattered. The empire he had sworn to glorify had been humiliated beyond repair. Admiral Vera stood unmoved as reports came in. Enemy formations broken. 70% of their armadas destroyed. The rest fleeing into the void. She nodded, her voice calm. Record the wreckage. Transmit to High Command. Let the galaxy see. For this was not just victory. This was a warning carved in fire. The Terran fortress, its colossal bulk still floating in silence, began transmitting signals across the stars. Not words of peace, not words of boasting, but silent images of the battlefield, images of burning ships, shattered fleets, and ruined pride. Across alien worlds, leaders and citizens watched with horror. They had laughed at Earth, they had mocked their warnings. Now they stared at the cost of ignoring them. Elias and his crew listened as intercepted alien channels filled their displays. Panicked voices, fearful leaders, desperate whispers. Their weapons, impossible. They were never weak. They were waiting. If this is what they do to Koresh's fleets, what chance do we have? The fear spread faster than fire. Empires trembled. Worlds fell into silence. Humanity had not just destroyed an armada. They had destroyed the illusion that Earth was harmless. Still, among the ruin, Vera showed no celebration. Her officers looked to her, some with awe, some with unease. "Admiral, the galaxy will never forget this day," one said. She answered simply, "That is the point." Humanity had no desire to conquer, but they would never again be mocked, never again be underestimated. On the dying flagship, Koresh pulled himself to his feet one last time, his body broken, his voice weak. He opened a final transmission, broadcasting into the void, his words cracked with pain and despair. "We thought the humans wore masks of gentleness, we thought they were prey, but their silence was a blade. And we were the fools who walked into it." His voice faded. The eternal spear shuddered one last time, then split apart, its remains drifting into the cold void. The ruins of pride filled the forbidden zone. Alien empires would study the wreckage for centuries, whispering in fear of what Earth had revealed. They would remember the silence before the storm, the warnings ignored, the armadas that once sailed with arrogance and ended as wreckage. Humanity's strength had not been hidden by accident. It had been hidden by choice. Elias stared at the battlefield one last time, his voice quiet. This was never about destroying fleets, it was about teaching a lesson. His crew looked at him confused. "What lesson?" He answered, "That Earth may be gentle, but it is never weak. That warnings are not threats, but promises." His words settled heavy in the cabin. They all knew the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again, as the Terran fleets pulled back into the shadows, their black hulls fading once more into silence. The galaxy trembled. The wreckage was left behind, a monument of destruction, a scar burned into the stars. No one would forget the ruins of pride, and no one would ever dare cross into Earth's space again. The battlefield was quiet now, eerily quiet. The firestorms that had torn the void apart were fading into embers. The wreckage of proud alien armadas drifted endlessly, a broken crown scattered across Terran space. What had once been fleets of glory and arrogance were now silent ruins. Humanity stood victorious, but their silence was louder than any cheer. On the bridge of the Invictus, Admiral Vera gazed at the displays. Her officers whispered to one another, awe in their voices. "It's over," one said. "Their fleets are gone," another added. But Vera's eyes were cold, steady. "No," she said quietly. "This is only the beginning." Her words carried across the command deck, settling like iron. For she knew what the galaxy would do next. Fear was a weapon, and fear needed to be sharpened. Captain Elias, aboard his scout ship, felt his chest tighten as the transmissions began. Terran High Command sent orders across the fleet. "Broadcast to all channels," the order read, and so they did. The human ships sent a single message into the stars, not cloaked, not hidden, but open for all empires to hear. The message was simple, spoken in a voice steady and clear. Earth does not seek war, Earth does not seek conquest, but Earth does not forgive trespass. Let the wreckage of this day be our answer. Enter Terran space again, and there will be no survivors. The words echoed across the galaxy, bouncing from station to station, world to world. Alien leaders trembled as they listened. Some sat in silence, staring at the images of shattered fleets. Others shouted in fear, demanding new defenses, entire councils Erupted in chaos, arguments broke out. Should they challenge the humans again or bow to their power? No one dared answer quickly, for the ruins spoke louder than politics. On the destroyed frontier worlds of Karesh's empire, citizens wept. They had once cheered their fleets as invincible. Now they watched in horror as the truth reached them. Fathers, sons, daughters lost among the stars, all gone because of pride. Whispers filled the streets. The humans warned us. We should have listened. On the Invictus, Vera remained silent as her officers replayed intercepted channels. The galaxy's fear was spreading, and that was enough. She raised her hand slowly. Order the fleets to vanish. One by one, the massive Terran ships cloaked again. There, dark hulls fading into the void. The fortress, the dreadnoughts, the destroyers, all melted into shadow until only silence remained. It was as if they had never been there at all. Only the wreckage testified that the storm had come. Elias leaned back in his chair, his voice low. They'll tell stories about this. Every world, every council, every child. His crew nodded. What will they call it? One asked. Elias's eyes darkened. The day the mask was lifted. He thought of the centuries when humanity had played the role of the gentle species, patient and quiet. He thought of the moment when that mask had been torn away. The galaxy had seen the truth, and the truth could not be forgotten. In distant systems, rumors spread like fire. Some said humanity's fleets were endless, hidden in every shadow. Others swore Earth had weapons that could shatter stars. There were even whispers that humanity had allies unknown, creatures waiting in silence beside them. None of it was proven. None of it needed to be. For the fear was enough. Admiral Karesh's empire, once arrogant, was silent now. With its armadas broken, its worlds lay exposed. Rivals circled like vultures. Empires that had once bowed to Karesh's fleets, now prepared to carve away his throne. But none of them dared step into Terran. Space, even in victory, Earth had claimed nothing, conquered nothing. They wanted only silence. But that silence carried a weight heavier than empires. On the Invictus, Vera finally allowed herself a breath. Her voice was calm. Transmit the final warning. Her officers obeyed. The last message, echoed into the galaxy, carried across light years. Humanity is not your enemy, but humanity is not your prey. We wear the mask of peace, but beneath it, we carry the storm. Choose wisely, for the next trespass will be the last. The channel went dark. Across alien worlds, the message replayed again and again. Some leaders gathered their fleets closer to home. Others tore down plans of expansion. Some even whispered of treaties with Earth, not out of respect, but out of fear. The galaxy had seen wars before, countless wars, but never had an empire fallen so swiftly. Never had power been so absolute. Elias and his crew drifted silently as the Terran fleets vanished from sight. The scout ship was small, fragile, compared to the titans that had just fought. Yet he felt pride heavier than any. Dreadnought, he whispered. We are not the weakest, we are not the youngest. We are the patient ones. His crew nodded, their eyes reflecting both fear and pride. They knew the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. The stars burned on, cold and eternal. But the void itself felt changed. The Forbidden Zone had claimed its trespassers, and the wreckage would remain as a monument for centuries. No songs would praise the invaders. No statues would honor their pride. Only silence, and the memory of a warning ignored. And so the story closed, not with cheers, not with glory, but with silence. Humanity returned to the shadows, their fleets hidden once more, waiting, watching. The galaxy held its breath, knowing one truth above all. Earth had spoken, and only a fool would dare test them again.